on the level of women and youth in the sector has underestimated their importance in agricultural production and hence led to their neglect in this sector development. For a developing country like Kenya, the agricultural sector has direct implications on at least two critical areas that have to be addressed, namely food security, nutrition, and employment creation. We shall endeavor to provide practical solutions on our forum today through our panelists who are directly involved in promoting women and youth inclusiveness in the sector. To be part of this live discussion, you can join via slido.com and the event code is FARMKenya. We are also available on Twitter at KTNewsKE, at Agina Abi, and the hashtag for this conversation is FARMKenya. Well, I'd like to begin by introducing our guests who are joining us from multiple locations across the country and the borders. First off, we start with STELLA KIMANI. She is the manager for Agri-Services and Digital Platforms, Syngenta Foundation, East Africa. She has 10 years work experience, half of which was spent in business support services such as quality management systems, recruitment, market surveys, capacity building programs, and environmental studies. Her experience in today's topic is working with rural entrepreneurs, referred to as Farmers Hub, and building their business capacity to sustainably serve the smallholder farmers. Through this work, she has interacted with both youth and women entrepreneurs and has an appreciation of some of the challenges and opportunities existing for this cluster. Well, to my second guest, we have Sabdio Dido Bashuna. She is the head of gender and inclusiveness at AGRA. With over 20 years of work experience in international development, she is a thought leader on inclusive agriculture value chains, trade and investments, with a special lens on women, youth and other disadvantaged groups. Among her key contributions are the flagships such as Climark, a program promoting market-led approaches to climatic resilience in the livestock sector in the Horn of Africa, and Value for Her. Sabdio is credited with catalyzing collaborative public, private and funding partnerships and has led global teams across multiple geographies. And finally, we have the gentleman who continues to make a lot of headlines in the agricultural world, and that is Caleb Karoga. He's a poultry, dairy and horticulture farmer and a well-sought-after agribusiness consultant. Before embracing agribusiness, he was an award-winning senior reporter with a local television station. Caleb has mentored many people in farming with great success. Reports from as far as Zanzibar, Dar es Salaam, Namibia, Angola and Rwanda. With his clarion call, Ukulima Sio Shamba, Caleb Karoga is on a mission to get young people in Africa back to practicing agribusiness and not agriculture. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the panel we shall be engaging in a short while. Before we get into the discussion, let's set the tone for our conversation by hearing from some women and youth on what their experiences and lessons in agribusiness have been like.
Ukulima huwezi kuacha kufanya juu mi upenda ukulima juu hakuna sasa unakatwa na mtu. Ile pesa unapata unajipangia we mwenyewe. Sasa hapo ndio uzuri wa ukulima. Lakini sasa majani chai unakatwa pesa ya fertilizer, sasa zenye zitafika ziko chini sana. Sasa nikaona badala nianze habari ya diversification. Na sasa hata hapa Pandia Tetu tumeshaanza kufunza watu habari ya diversification. Juu kuna watu sasa wako na hizi nyumba za mbuzi. Tuko group kama watu 15. Na wengine kuna wamepanda yams, hizi ndoma za hizi za Rwanda, na wengine kuna wanafanya fish pond. Saa hivyo ndio kitu nilipenda mambo saa ukulima.
As for the youth, you don't really need to start thinking of very grand things. Think of starting small, seeing where your passion is first and foremost. There are very many sectors in agriculture. There's livestock where you have the chicken, the cows, you have the crops and all those things. So you need to understand where your passion lies, and from there, start to build on it. Start to gain as much knowledge as you can, because knowledge is power. And from it, you can start you can actually change the narrative from jobless youth to youth who are actually doing things to empower themselves.
So there's money to be made in the industry, the agricultural sector, and as you saw, even when there was a cessation of movement, the president actually kept the agricultural sector, and this was actually pronounced that it's an essential service industry. So that shows the importance and the critical role that agriculture plays. And this is the only sector that is also able to incorporate our young people and give them a form of employment, business opportunities that lie within the agricultural value chains. Wherever they may need to tap into, they are able to tap into, into the value chains and be able to make, a decent living out of it. Again, where there lies great challenges, lies great opportunities, and we may want the youth to see it that way.
Well, those are some of the sentiments of Kenyans just giving their take on what it takes to actually be a successful entrepreneur in the agricultural space. Well, let's get this conversation on the roll. I'd like to start off with bringing in STELLA to just give her opening remarks in regards to where are we as a country when it comes to young people and women being actively involved in agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to join this conversation on women and youth involvement in agribusiness. My simple understanding of agribusiness for the sake of this conversation will be agribusiness is the business of being involved in agricultural production. So that in essence implies that agriculture or agribusiness is just not the business of farming or the farm production, but it has other elements to it. And these are elements like input supply, access to markets, mechanization and advisory services, storage, there's transport and logistics. So it's a holistic, it's a bit more broad than what may be understood as agribusiness. So the involvement of youth and women in agribusiness is more and more pulling traction. And through our portfolio at the Syngenta Foundation, the agri-service portfolio, we deal with rural entrepreneurs. And these rural entrepreneurs offer several services, some of them access to inputs, mechanization, markets, and advisory services. So I'm glad to be in this conversation to offer some insights and experiences based on this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Madam Kimani. Let me bring in Subdio joining us also, just to set the tone for us from your opening remarks. How is our landscape as a country when it comes to people embracing young people in agriculture?
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. Yes, agribusiness has a huge opportunity for generally the continent. I think the statistics are very, very clear. A very recent Africa Development Bank-led investment forum clearly highlighted that the African agribusiness sector is actually going to be $1 trillion by 2030.
Wow.
So this is a huge, huge opportunity for, first of all, for to just wake up and embrace this huge, immense world that is just sitting at its doorsteps. This is one. And of course, at the moment, that sector actually stands at $7 billion. So you can imagine the value that is still not explored at this moment. And this gives opportunities to our young people, this gives opportunities to our women, this gives opportunities to our local industries. And this is where I think our governments need to put in place the necessary measures to ensure that our local industries, agro industries grow. And I'm sure we will hear from somebody like Caleb, for example, how you start small, but build up. Build it up towards, you can start as a cottage industry and build it up to, a medium level industry and possibly aggregate less down and grow the industrial track. the agro-industrial track that is really that is moving very slowly at the moment. And if you look at agribusiness generally in Africa, and this is also specific to Kenya as well, we are exporting agricultural commodities. This is like taking away jobs. We are exporting value, and we import back processed products. This is a waste, honestly, for a country and for a continent that now, at this moment, possibly has the biggest amount of natural resources in terms of agricultural production. So I really think that there's a huge opportunity for young people, there's a huge opportunity for women, and we just need to put the right incentives and the right policies in place to enable them to start.
All right, thank you for those sobering sentiments there. Let me bring in Caleb, my good friend and former colleague in the media profession. Great to see you, Caleb. Ukulima sio ushamba.
True, Abi, ukulima sio ushamba, and thanks for having me here.
All right, Caleb, when you listen to such comments from Madam Stella and Madam Sabidio, right now, Kenyans are still grappling with the effects of the COVID-19. Some have ventured into agribusiness as a side hustle. Is it high time that we started looking at agriculture differently, that it can actually be your main job, not your side hustle?
Very true. And to kick off this conversation, I think we need to start having a different conversation with both the young people and the old people. Because governments, both state and non-state actors, will tell the young people, get to the farms, there's money to be made. Banks will tell people, come and get loans. But there's a disconnect that I find in this conversation, because how many young people have a logbook? How many young people have a parcel of land to their name that they can access financing? So they can do that. The conversations again we're having with these young people must shift from, we are looking at the average age of a Kenyan farmer is 60 years. Mm-hmm. So the knowledge and skills transfer from the old people to the young people, there's a disconnect, because my grandfather, my mom, my uncle, Ngujiri back in the village in Mukureni will tell me, we plant over March because there'll be long rains, but climate change has happened. So that disconnect, we have to have honest conversation with the young people that fine, let's go get this knowledge from the old people. But the reality has changed. Banks can no longer sit pretty and hope that young people will come and ask for financing. We have to look at the disruption that has taken place even in the agriculture sector, even during COVID and post-COVID situation.
Interesting opening remarks there. And this definitely sets us on a motion that as we look at this conversation around youth and women in agribusiness, Madam Stella, I just want to get your insights when it comes to what are some of the key interventions that we need to make, especially to make agriculture to be cool among young people, for young people to also see they can actually make money and earn a living from agriculture.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this, how to approach this for me, for the youth, is really to expose them to potential opportunities. So as we currently see it, youth tend to be inclined towards farm production. So this is what they see or appreciate as agribusiness. Yet there's broader and more opportunities in agribusiness in itself. So the youth need to figure out, where am I excited to join in? And this needs to be coupled up with identifying a need. So like Caleb had mentioned, there's a disconnect between what the youth require as entrepreneurs and what is being offered. So the youth at this point really need to find out, in the entire value chain, could it be access to seeds? Is that where there's a gap? Could it be access to markets? Is that where there's a gap? Is it mechanization? Is it aggregation of inputs and outputs? So it's for the youth to think a bit broader and identify where they can plug into the agribusiness space. So that's what I think the youth should really approach this agribusiness aspect from.
All right. And still staying with you, Madam Stella,
Yeah.
Just walk us through some of the key issues that you've been able to tackle as Syngenta Foundation when it comes to empowering people to be able to venture into agriculture.
Yeah. So what we've done with our youth and our women is we have exposed them to the potentials or the opportunities of existing in agribusiness. So we have some youth working in markets, and this is in the simplicity of things. This is in identifying that, yes, in our community here in Nyandarua, we have farmers who are farming, but they really don't have the correct access to markets. So we have one particular youth in Oljororok who has taken on the initiative to link up with his peers, his youth in Machakos. And what they do is the youth in Oljororok will source for potatoes, and he will transfer or send them to the youth in Machakos, who will then seek for a market in Machakos. So it is really about opening the eyes of the youth of what the different opportunities are existing. We have another example of a youth by the name William in Nyandarua as well. And what he has done is he has identified that there's a gap in aggregation of inputs. So the agri-vets or the stockists could be there in the trade centers, but the farmers are really moving long distances to get these inputs. So what he does is that he aggregates the inputs for the farmers in a certain locality and gets them on their behalf and supplies. So all I can say is the youth really need to be shown what is possible so that they can understand where they can then participate in. So to, again, I repeat, to broaden the scope and the opportunities that exist in agribusiness.
Interesting. And let me bring in Madam Sabdio. Caleb did touch on a very interesting aspect that how many young people own land and can actually present a title deed. How many young people have a collateral that they can approach the bank with? I'm saying this because my next question is sort of tied to this, because 80% of women in Africa are able to produce the crop in the farms, but only 1% of them can actually say they own this very important factor of production.
Absolutely, and this is of course a big challenge, that land ownership at the moment follows patriarchal patterns, and so certainly women are, of course, in some communities in Africa it is a little bit different, but they're very few. I mean, majority of Africans actually land ownership and inheritance is passed along patriarchal lines. So then it means that very few women actually own land. The land is owned by the male member of the family. And so they end up producing, of course, providing their labor in the production of food. But in some instances, they don't even have actual control over the income that is generated by that crop. So we understand this and this is a big challenge. The idea is to move more women into the agribusiness end. And the reason is that one, especially for younger people, this is something that doesn't need to leverage land as a productive asset. That they can get into other businesses within the value chain. And I think that is what the speaker earlier was explaining. So it can be businesses around bulking, it can be businesses around extension, like what we do, for example, at Agra, we have these village-based advisors, and youth are part of this. And it can also be other value-added businesses. There are a couple of youth groups we are supporting at the moment on around dairy enterprises. For example, they are producing silage and they are selling silage to dairy farmers, and they're making income from that. So there are a series of things that can be done that doesn't have to leverage land, and it's the same for women. So we're pushing more and more of them into the business, and of course this requires that they're able to get at least some form of capital that will start them in the business. The tendency is at the moment that women use family business or borrow from, you know, within the family network to be able to start the business. And then from there, hopefully, they would be able to generate enough asset base to get financing.
All right.
Financing is another complex thing, of course, for women, and collateral comes in the structure of financing itself, the complexity of the processes. All these limit women. So again, there is need for financial institutions, of course, to understand, you know, where the women are coming from, the kind of asset base they have, and the kind of collateral they can leverage for their businesses. So these are some of the things that we are trying to address through knowledge and evidence and you know, models that actually work out there in the field.
All right. And Mr. Caleb Karoga, I'll be coming back to you to also just get a sense of how do we solve this issue of land, which is very emotive, especially in now that we are seeing a lot of young people very keen on getting into agribusiness, but land remains as a serious barrier. We'll be having this when we come back from this quick commercial break.
With the ever-rising number of unemployed women and youth, what are the opportunities in agribusiness that can help mitigate the adverse effects hindering the economic growth of Kenya and her people? Join Farm Kenya Connect as we discuss the challenges, opportunities and successes of agribusiness as a solution to unemployment in Kenya. Follow the discussion on all our social media platforms.